Let me start by saying I know we're having some microphone problems. Roger's not doing anything wrong. I'm not doing anything wrong. The vestry has done something very right, which is to say they've approved purchasing an improved sound system. New microphones are on their way. So just, as if there was any doubt. Thank you very much. Hopefully this microphone will work fine. Do you remember the Got Milk ads from the 90s? Yeah? You remember the first of the series of TV commercials showed a man getting a call from a radio trivia contest. A lot of money at stake here. And the disc jockey asked him a question that he clearly knows the answer to. Like a divinely inspired timing that they would call him for this question, because he knows it. But because his mouth is full of a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and there's no milk to wash it down, his answer is unintelligible. And the agony of the missed opportunity is followed by that question, got milk? It was a very effective campaign for the dairy producers. It engendered panic in me. Because you can imagine driving home after a hard day at work, having survived, 30 minutes of competitive interstate driving, maybe not in Stanton, but, in other places. And then just as your house is coming into view, you hear somebody asking, got milk? Well, I don't know. Was I supposed to stop? Maybe I was supposed to stop. Is there enough milk? Should I turn around and go to the store, or can I just go home? Do I risk that? I hated that ad. I wonder if for us, the question, got faith, might evoke a similar response. Does that question, got faith, invite a confident yes? Or maybe a hesitant, I think so? Or maybe an embarrassed, I'd like to? Or if we're being honest, yes, I have faith, but I could use some more of it. Many thoughtful Christians, I believe, live with a faith inferiority complex. Now, you don't need to raise your hand, and it doesn't register just by looking at you, but I would imagine that you too may suffer from a faith inferiority complex. We wonder, how does our faith stack up compared to others? Do we have as much as they do? Do we have as much as we should? And that's the problem with viewing faith as a commodity, something that we can sort of measure and package and contain, much like we do with money. We mistakenly, I think, sometimes think of having a faith bank account, and then we worry about how much is in it. But maybe there's another way, a more helpful and scriptural way to think about faith. Frederick Buechner's words provide a helpful corrective here. Faith is, he says, faith is better understood as a verb than as a noun, as a process rather than a possession. The people from both of today's healing miracles demonstrate this faithing process. They show that faith isn't about what they believe, but what they do. Faith is Jairus falling at Jesus' feet and begging him to help his ailing daughter. Faith is the desperate woman frantically grasping just to touch the hem of Jesus' cloak. Faith is her then coming up to him despite her fear, trembling and falling down before him. Faith is Jairus waiting in those agonizing moments while Jesus talks to her, and still walking with Jesus to his daughter's bedside despite the news of death and the derision of the crowd. For both the hemorrhaging woman and the synagogue leader, the panicked father, faith is a verb, or, I guess to be more precise, a gerund. Faith is built by faithing. And faith is also not a fully developed belief structure. New Testament scholar Matt Skinner, he points out that neither the woman nor the synagogue leader refer to Jesus as Messiah or Son of David or Lord or anything like that. They don't recite the Apostles' Creed, explain the Trinity, or pledge money to Jesus' movement. They simply come. If we want to know what they believe, we can say that they believe that Jesus can help them. That's what they believe, that Jesus can help them, or they hope that he might. It's about trust, maybe desperation. For us, in this age of information and technological advancement, we may be mocked for trusting in things we can't prove or fully understand. But let's face it, how could we, the created, ever fully comprehend the Creator? Or how could the finite even begin to approach the infinite? Faith isn't about full understanding or total comprehension. Faith is about trusting. Believing is important, but as Dallas Willard puts it, we don't believe something merely by saying it, or even when we believe that we believe it. We believe something when we act as if it is true. When we act as if it is true, acting, faithing. So take, for example, if you would, your television's remote control. Do y'all all have remote controls for your television? You probably have more than 3 channels now too, don't you? Yeah. Well, my guess is that not many of us understand how that remote control works. We couldn't explain it in detail or write a paper on how it functions. Yet my lack of understanding how it works doesn't stop me up from picking it up every time I want to change the channel. I act like it works. I trust that it works. It's worked before, it'll work again. Faith is acting like something is true. Now, that's not to say that we don't continue striving to know God with our minds, as well as with our hearts and souls and strength. St. Anselm famously stated and lived by the motto of faith seeking understanding. We do too. We're faithing. Part of our faithing is seeking more and more understanding. So what do? We keep reading the scriptures, attending Christian education classes, listening quietly in prayer for deeper understanding. But first, possibly even driven just by desperation, we act as if Jesus saves us. Because God did not make death. God does not delight in the death of the living. These miracles, they're not an exception. They're a revelation of God's intention for all of creation. So we keep faithing. That's what the bleeding woman and the terrified Jairus did. They acted as if it were true that Jesus could help them. That's what they believed. They trusted. Their desperation drove them to their knees, directed them to the source of not only their healing, but their restoration. Their faith wasn't contingent on a full mastery and unwavering commitment to a set of theological premises. Their faith wasn't a noun, it was a verb, active and ongoing. And their faithing did more than make them well. Their faithing saved them. It brought them back to life. The woman wasn't only cured, she was healed. Jesus wasn't content just for her to disappear in the crowds. He called her back, called her daughter, and returned her, restored her to her community. Jairus' daughter wasn't only touched, she was grasped and told to get up. A foreshadowing, the same word there used to describe Jesus' resurrection, being raised up. Faith isn't a commodity we possess or a mental state that we achieve. Faith is grabbing hold of the only thing that will save us, holding on for dear life. There's a story that might illustrate this, and then I promise I'll wrap this up. John Polkinghorne is both a theoretical physicist and an Anglican priest. Just let that sink in for a minute, right? Because that alone says a lot. He used the following story to illustrate this type of faithing based on what we do rather than what we know. So he says, a philosopher, a scientist, and a simple person, none of whom could swim, were trapped in a cove with sheer cliff faces all around them. And the tide started coming in. There was nowhere for them to go. Fortunately, rescuers from at the very top of the cliff lowered down a rope with a safety harness on it. The philosopher saw it first. He says, looks like a rope, but I might be mistaken. It could be wishful thinking or an illusion. So he didn't attach himself. He drowned. The scientist said, this is an 11 millimeter polyester rope with a breaking strain of 2,800 kilograms. It conforms to the MR 1081 standard. And then he proceeded to give an exhaustive and entirely correct analysis of the rope's physical and chemical properties. But he didn't attach himself. He drowned. The simple person said, I'm not sure if it's a rope or a python tail, but it's my only chance. So I'm grabbing it and holding on with my whole life. And he was saved. Faithing is grabbing and holding on to this love of God made known in Jesus, holding on for dear life. If you're feeling like your lack of understanding somehow hinders your faith, that somehow your belief is imperfect or incomplete, remember that faith is so much more about what you do than what you can explain. It's more of a process than a possession. And then, if someone asks you, got faith? Humbly and confidently tell them, I don't have a thing, I have a God whose powerful love revealed in Christ saves me, is saving me day by day. I am trusting that each and every day. I am holding on to him for dear life. That is the faithing that saves us.